Your choice reveals a recurring pattern, and that is why this matters more than it seems. What draws you first is often not random at all. In a quiet way, it can point to the same emotional movement you repeat in love, in fear, in hope, and in the small moments when no one else can see what your heart is carrying. A butterfly looks gentle, almost weightless, yet its whole existence is about change, about leaving one form behind and stepping into another. That is why this Jungian test can feel so personal. Jung believed that the symbols that call to us often reflect something alive in the unconscious, something we already know but have not fully faced. So when one butterfly pulls you in more than the others, it may be revealing the kind of transformation you long for, the pain you still protect, or the part of yourself that is waiting to be seen with more honesty and more compassion. Do not overthink it now. Simply choose a butterfly from 1 to 5 and stay with the very first one that touches you. First impressions matter more than logic here, because logic usually speaks after the deeper part of you has already chosen. The mind likes to compare, explain, and correct, but the soul often answers before words appear. So trust the first feeling, even if it surprises you, even if it feels small, even if you cannot explain why. Stay with your choice. Let it be simple. Let it be yours. And keep watching, because by the end I'm going to connect your choice to something concrete, practical, and real. Something you can actually do today to begin shifting the pattern this symbol may be showing you. The full meaning does not open all at once. It becomes clear only at the end when the image, the emotion, and the deeper pattern finally come together. But before we go further, pause the video for a moment and leave your name in the comments. Give this test a place to land in the real world. Let it mean something. Sometimes healing begins with a small act of presence, and this can be that moment for you. If you chose option 1, this usually happens when you have learned to become softer, quieter, and easier to carry than your real feelings ever were. The white butterfly often calls to the part of the soul that survived by looking calm, light, and harmless, even when something deeper was asking to be seen. In simple Jungian language, this choice can point to the gentle persona, the one that keeps peace on the outside while the shadow hides unmet needs, swallowed anger, and a quiet grief that never learned a safe voice. Pay attention to this, because people often praise this pattern as maturity. They say you are easy to be around, never dramatic, always thoughtful, always understanding. But stay with me, because peace is not the same as truth, and kindness is not the same as self-abandonment. Very often this choice appears in someone who learned early that being low maintenance was the safest way to stay loved. Maybe in your home, feelings took up too much space. Maybe someone fragile depended on your calm. Or maybe you discovered that asking for comfort made the room colder instead of warmer. So you adapted in a beautiful but costly way. You became the one who smooths the moment, who smiles gently, who says it is fine before checking whether it is fine for you. And here is the hidden loop, the part most people miss. When light is used to cover pain, the shadow does not vanish, it waits. It shows up as tiredness you cannot explain, as quiet resentment when others take your softness for granted, as loneliness in rooms where everyone thinks you are perfectly okay. Stay with me here, because this does not mean your softness is false. It means your light became a shield before it could become a gift. And that matters, because the archetype here is not weakness. It is the innocent peacekeeper, the tender figure that brings warmth, reads moods quickly, and creates beauty through gentleness, but forgets that a soul cannot heal by hiding its edges forever. Think of an ordinary day. A friend cancels at the last minute, and you immediately say no problem, even though you had been waiting all week for that moment of connection. At work, someone hands you one more task, and you smile before your body has time to answer. In love, you say, I understand, when part of you is aching to say, please notice me. Pay attention to that pattern. It is small on the surface, but it shapes a life. When you abandon yourself in tiny ways, the unconscious learns that your truth can wait, and what waits too long often returns as sadness, numbness, or sudden tears over something that seems too small. This is why Jung's test can feel strangely accurate. The symbol does not create the wound, it simply lights the doorway to it. And once you can see the doorway, you are no longer trapped inside the same room. So what is the gift in this choice? Pay attention to this part too. The gift is real. You probably notice subtle shifts before others do. You can calm a room, protect tenderness, and make people feel less alone. You may have a rare ability to hold beauty in difficult spaces without becoming cruel. That is no small thing. But the shadow asks a serious price when the light serves everyone except the self. You end up loved for your softness and unseen in your depth. You become easy to receive and hard to recognize, and sooner or later the heart asks for more than approval. It asks for room. It asks for truth. It asks for a life where your kindness does not require your disappearance. Today, stand in front of a mirror, place one hand on your chest, and say one clear sentence you usually swallow. I need more honesty than this. Then send one message, make one true request, or decline one small thing without apology, and let your own voice remain in the room. If you choose option 2, this message usually appears when you have learned to shine in a way that keeps people close enough to admire you, but not close enough to touch the part of you that still trembles. The blue butterfly often attracts the person who has made beauty, control, and mystery into a kind of emotional armor, because being fascinating has felt safer than being fully seen. Stay with me here, because this choice is not about vanity. It is about a quiet split inside the psyche, the place where desire reaches forward, while fear keeps one hand on the door. In simple Jungian language, the symbol points to a polished persona and a guarded shadow at the same time. One part of you wants to be wanted, and another part does not trust what will happen after the mask opens. That is the internal conflict. You may long for closeness, warmth, and recognition, yet the moment someone comes near enough to notice your uncertainty, you become careful, witty, composed, or unreadable. Pay attention to this image. A bright wing flashes in sunlight, and everyone turns, but the body beneath it is fragile, alert, and always ready to fly before the gaze becomes too intimate. This is why people with this pattern are often misunderstood. Others think they are distant because they are proud, when in truth they are protecting a softer and more impressionable center. You can see it in ordinary scenes. Someone you like sends a warm message, and instead of answering from the heart, you revise it 3 times, make it lighter, make it sharper, make it safer. At work, you know the answer in the meeting, but you deliver it with perfect calm, almost too perfect, as if smoothness could protect you from being questioned too closely. In friendships, you listen beautifully, you notice everything, you offer insight. But when the moment comes to say what hurt you, your voice suddenly becomes elegant instead of honest. Stay with me, because the mini-crisis lives right here. The more admired you become for your control, the harder it gets to reveal the ache beneath it, and then the very image that protects you begins to imprison you. That is the shadow of this butterfly. It promises beauty and control, but if you lean on it too heavily, it can turn longing into performance and tenderness into distance. But there is light here too. Your sensitivity is not weakness. Your instinct for nuance, timing, style, and emotional weather can be a real gift, especially when it stops serving fear and starts serving truth. So ask yourself something simple and sharp. Do you want to be impressive, or do you want to be known? Do you want to stay protected, or do you want to stay alive? Those questions matter because the turning point for this pattern is never dramatic at first. It begins in one small moment when you decide not to polish the feeling before you speak it. Today, take 15 minutes and send one message to a person you trust using only plain language. Name one feeling, name one need, and ask one direct question without adding humor, charm, or distance. Then sit still for the rest of that time and notice what rises in your body, because that wave is not proof that you did something wrong. It is proof that the old protection has been interrupted, and that is how a new self begins. Once you understand this, the symbol changes. The butterfly is not asking you to become less graceful. It is asking you to let grace and truth stand in the same room, so beauty stops being a curtain and starts being a bridge. And when that happens, even a small honest act feels like a threshold. Your heart races, the old mask whispers, and for a second you may want to retreat. Pay attention there. That second is the door. Walk through it anyway, with care. If you could choose 3, it is often because some part of you already knows the feeling of carrying too much, and still calling it purpose. That choice usually comes with a quiet emotional logic. You trust what keeps moving. You trust what survives long distances. You trust what does not fall apart in public. And deep down, that can happen when your heart learned early that being dependable was safer than being vulnerable. Option 3 often belongs to the person who keeps going long after the inner signal says enough. In Jungian terms, this can point to a schema built around duty, a persona shaped by strength, and a subtle form of avoidance that hides inside responsibility. Stay with me, because this pattern does not look dramatic from the outside. It looks admirable. It looks mature. It looks like the person everyone relies on. But the shadow of this role is heavy. The more you become known as the one who can handle anything, the harder it becomes to admit that some of what you handle is no longer yours to carry. Here is an unexpected twist. The problem is not only that you do too much. The deeper problem is that your identity may now depend on doing too much, because stopping would force a question you have delayed for a long time. Who are you when you are not rescuing the day? That is where the conflict begins. A monarch butterfly crosses impossible distances by instinct, and that is why this symbol fits so well. It speaks to loyalty, endurance, migration, and inner direction, but it also whispers something more difficult. Not every long journey is freedom. Sometimes it is repetition wearing noble colors. Think of a normal week. At work, you accept one more task even though your list is already full, because you do not trust it will be done well without you. In a relationship, you become the planner, the calmer, the one who remembers everything while your own needs slide to the back again. In daily life, you postpone one decision that matters to you. Maybe a boundary, maybe a conversation, maybe a change you know is overdue, because someone else seems to need your energy first. See what happens next. Little by little, duty becomes a shield. The schema says that usefulness equals worth. The persona says that strong people do not hesitate. Avoidance says that as long as you are busy, you do not have to face the life that is asking to be chosen. Pay attention to that. This is why option 3 can feel strangely moving. It reveals a person with real gifts. You may be steady under pressure. You may know how to finish what others abandon. You may bring direction into chaos. Those are beautiful qualities. But when the shadow takes over, commitment turns into self-neglect, loyalty turns into overextension, and discipline becomes a story that keeps your real desire waiting outside the room. The good news is that this pattern can shift the moment you stop confusing delay with wisdom. Today, set a timer for 15 minutes and write down 3 open commitments you keep postponing. Choose one that depends only on you, decide the next visible step, and complete that step before the timer ends. Then send one message or place one note in your calendar that locks the next deadline into place. No perfect plan, no noble excuse, just one clear decision followed by one kept promise. That is how this changes. Not through a grand reinvention, but through the moment your strength stops serving avoidance and starts serving your own life. If you chose 4, there is usually a quiet tension inside you between control and surrender, between the wish to move forward and the fear that one honest step will cost you something you cannot easily get back. This choice often appears when a person senses that change is necessary, but still holds the doorframe with one hand. You may look calm on the outside, even strong, even decisive, yet inside there is a constant measuring of risk, a careful guarding of what could be lost, a private resistance that feels wise because it sounds like caution. Stay with me, because this is where Jung becomes useful in a very human way. For Jung, the shadow is not only the dark impulse, it is also the part of us that hides what we fear, what we refuse, what we have not made room for. When option 4 pulls you in, it can point to a shadow organized around limitation and fear of change. Not because you are weak, but because some earlier part of you learned that surrender could bring pain, embarrassment, abandonment, or loss of control. So the psyche creates a rule: hold on tighter, delay the answer, keep the feeling contained. Do not let life move too fast. And this rule can look intelligent for a while. It can even look responsible, but pay attention to the cost. What protects you can slowly become what confines you. You probably repeat this pattern in smaller ways than you notice. You keep a conversation unfinished. You reread a message instead of sending it. You stay in a routine that has gone empty. You say maybe when your body already knows the answer. You tell yourself you are still thinking, when in truth you are trying to avoid the grief of letting one version of life end. You return to this defense more often than you allow yourself to see. That is why this symbol has force. The dark butterfly carries mystery but also threshold energy. It belongs to the moment before release, the moment when the old self knows it cannot keep everything, and the new self has not yet learned to trust the air. Here is a simple scene. A friend asks whether you are truly happy in your relationship, your work, or your current rhythm, and you answer with something careful and half-true. Later that night you feel the real answer in your chest, but you do nothing with it. The next day everything continues. From the outside, nothing happened. Inside, the same struggle deepened. This is how limitation grows, not through one dramatic refusal, but through many quiet delays that train the soul to stay small. Yet there is strength in this choice too. You may be perceptive, serious, and deeply instinctive. You can sense danger before others do. You can see complexity, hidden motives, and emotional undercurrents. Those gifts matter, but the shadow twists the gift when discernment turns into permanent defense. Then every open door starts to feel like a trap, and every necessary ending starts to feel like ruin. So listen carefully. The real question is not whether change is risky. It always is. The real question is whether your need for control is now costing you more than the thing you fear losing. That is the turning point. Today, choose one decision you have left hanging, and answer it with a clear yes or a clear no before the day ends. If the answer is yes, write the next step and schedule it immediately. If the answer is no, send the message, close the loop, and let the silence after it teach you that clarity is safer than endless tension. This is how surrender begins. Not as collapse, not as weakness, but as the moment you stop negotiating with what you already know. Then you see the loss you feared was only the shell of an old role, and what remains is a steadier strength that no longer depends on delay or disguise. You can breathe lighter now inside. If you chose 5, something in you is already moving, even if your outer life still looks arranged, polite, and familiar. This choice usually appears when transformation has stopped being a distant dream and has become a demand from the deeper self, a pressure to break with an order that once protected you but now keeps you small. Pay attention to this, because option 5 does not speak about waiting forever. It speaks about dynamism, about inner momentum, about the moment when the soul has already crossed a line that your habits are still pretending not to see. In simple Jungian language, this is the pull of individuation, not perfection, not performance, but the courage to gather the scattered parts of yourself and live from a center that feels more whole, more honest, and less borrowed. That is why this choice often belongs to someone who already knows what has to change, and yet keeps circling the gate, postponing the decision, delaying the conversation, adjusting the routine, as if one more day of hesitation could make the truth feel safer. You may see it in ordinary scenes, when you know a job no longer fits the person you are becoming, but you keep telling yourself that next month will be a better time, or when you avoid one honest talk because you can feel that after it, the old balance will not return. Stay with that image, because the established order is not always a law or a tradition. Sometimes it is simply the familiar arrangement of your days, the version of you that wakes up, repeats itself, and calls repetition stability. The subtle tension here is that another life has already begun inside you, but it has not yet received a public shape, so your voice grows firmer in private and softer in action, and the longer that split remains, the more restless your energy becomes. This is why people who choose 5 often feel both ready and delayed at the same time. Ready because the old shell no longer feels true. Delayed because stepping out of it means breaking a silent agreement with comfort, habit, or expectation. So the simple idea of individuation matters here, not as a grand theory, but as a plain act of courage. The courage to stop living by inherited rhythms and begin choosing from a truer center, even before the full path is visible. You do not need a dramatic revolution for this symbol to be true. You need one clean moment when your inner knowing outruns your old excuses. That might be the unpaid application still open on your screen, the message you keep saving as a draft, or the nightly promise to change one habit tomorrow instead of tonight. Read that carefully, because the shadow in this choice is not ignorance, it is postponement. It is the habit of feeling the call and then asking for one more sign, one more week, one more perfect state of mind, as if readiness was something that arrives from outside instead of something you build by crossing a threshold. The gift of this option is real. You may have unusual energy when something meaningful awakens in you. You may sense when a chapter is ending before anyone else can name it. You may even feel a kind of pressure in your body when your life is asking for a sharper form. That pressure is not your enemy. It is evidence that the old arrangement can no longer contain what is growing. So be very honest with yourself. Are you protecting your life, or are you protecting the version of you that was built to survive an earlier season? There is a difference, and your whole future may begin at that difference. Today, take 10 minutes, choose one delayed decision and make it final. Send the message, set the date, or remove the old object that keeps the past in motion, then write one line that begins with, "Now I begin here." Now you can see what all 5 choices were pointing toward, and it is simpler and deeper than it first looked. Each symbol opened a different door, but every door led to the same hidden room, the place where avoidance, repetition, and fear keep shaping the story before the conscious mind can name it. That is why this kind of Jungian test can feel so accurate, because a small choice can reveal the larger pattern that has been repeating underneath your habits, your roles, and even your hopes. In simple terms, the psyche does not only avoid pain, it also avoids the ending of a familiar identity, even when that identity has become too narrow for the life waiting to emerge. One person hides in peace, another in beauty, another in duty, another in control, and another in endless preparation. But the root is shared, a hidden fear that change will ask for more truth than the old self wants to give. Jung would say that whatever remains unseen does not disappear. It returns in cycles, in moods, in repeated choices, and in the strange feeling that life keeps bringing you back to the same lesson in different clothes. That is the folk psychology behind these symbols too, because the heart often chooses an image before the mind can explain it, and the image becomes a mirror for the conflict already living inside you. So if you feel recognized right now, that recognition is already an accomplishment, because it means the pattern is no longer fully hidden and the unconscious is no longer steering the whole process alone. Seeing the pattern is not the end of the journey, but it is a real crossing, because once you can name the old mechanism, you are no longer trapped inside it without knowing why. A new beginning rarely starts with certainty. It starts when awareness becomes stronger than repetition, and when you decide that the fear can come with you, but can no longer rule you. That is why the end of this video can also be the start of a truer chapter, one in which your light is not used to hide your shadow, but to meet it, hold it, and integrate it. Integration sounds big, but in ordinary life it means something very practical. The scattered parts begin to speak to each other, and your choices stop fighting your deeper knowledge. Instead of one part wanting peace and another wanting truth, or one part wanting safety and another wanting change, the inner split begins to soften, and energy returns to your actual life. This is the quiet victory hiding inside reflection, not that you solved everything at once, but that you have seen enough to stop calling the pattern fate. And once fate becomes pattern, pattern can become practice, and practice can become freedom. The real test begins after this video, because insight matters only when it enters your next choice, your next boundary, your next promise, and your next act of honesty. Today, write down the one change you keep postponing, then choose one visible step that makes the old delay impossible, and complete it before the day ends. Make it small enough to do, but real enough to prove that your life is no longer waiting for a perfect mood, a perfect answer, or a perfect version of you. That small act is how repetition breaks, how hidden fear loses authority, and how integration stops being an idea and becomes a lived beginning. So leave this video with more than emotion. Leave with a decision, because the moment you act with awareness, a quieter and stronger self begins to trust you. What you recognized here does not ask you to become someone else. It asks you to return to yourself without disguise, delay, or fear. And that is enough for today, because every honest beginning carries more future than the old pattern ever offered you again. If something in this video felt uncomfortably true, do not leave it here as just another passing feeling. Take this moment with you, because the part of you that recognized itself today deserves an answer, not another delay. Please indicate your chosen number in the comments. Please type your name. That small act matters more than it seems, because a truth becomes stronger when you're willing to place it somewhere real. Do not brush past your choice as if it were random, because the feeling that pulled you first may be the same feeling asking to guide your next step. Like this, if you want to mark this moment, not as an ending, but as the first honest sign that you are ready to stop repeating what already hurts. Subscribe if you want more of these mirrors, more of these quiet turns where the hidden pattern finally has nowhere left to hide. And if your heart is still a little unsettled, that may be a good sign, because real insight rarely feels neat when it first arrives. Watch the next test on your screen right now. Stay with the part of you that knows this is not only about a symbol, but about the life you keep promising yourself you will begin. The deepest change often starts quietly, with one comment, one name, one decision, and one small moment of honesty that you refuse to take back. Let this be the point where you stop watching yourself from a distance and begin standing beside your own truth. You have already seen enough to know that something in you is asking for more than delay, and I do not want you to lose that feeling the moment this ends. Carry it forward. Some endings are not losses at all. They are the first clean breaths after a long time of holding yourself together for everyone but yourself. You do not need to explain everything you felt here, but do not betray it either, because even a small honest response can open a door that has been closed for years. Maybe the reason this touched you is that some future version of you is tired of being postponed and is asking very quietly to be lived now. I want this ending to feel like a hand on your shoulder, not pushing you, just reminding you that your next step does not have to be loud to be real. What matters now is not intensity but honesty, not a perfect promise but a kept one, not a grand scene but a true beginning. So before you leave, let your choice become a trace in the world, a mark that says this moment reached you and you were brave enough to answer it. Let your next choice prove this was real now,